This is Rich Lowrich. He began his career as a photographer, graphic artist, and project manager in New York City, working in banking, pharmaceuticals, and fashion. As the Albany Times Union's first art director, 10 years, he spearheaded new sections and special editions, winning awards for illustration, design, and writing along the way. Hired as Procter's first art director in 2007, 13 years, he ushered the theater's image through its period of explosive growth and acquisition, eventually serving as a creative director of Procter's Collaborative. Richard's current studio serves clients across a broad range of industries, drawing upon an equally broad range of creative services from set design to branding and photography. Richard has recently released his book of short stories, Have a Very Bad Day. So if everybody will say hi to Rich.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, John. And welcome to the first digital projected competition of the 21-22 season. Fun topics. Hope everybody had a great summer. I know I had an exciting one, new house.
Congratulations.
Exciting things happening this summer. It was an exciting summer of houses. I got a new house. My girlfriend's son got a new house. My son got a new house. It was like the season to buy this year. All right, I'm going to share my screen here for a second. Everybody see that?
You bet.
All right. We have two assigned topics. The first assigned topic is fire, and the second one was slow shutter speed. In the first assigned topic, we have 18 entries with 3 places and 3 honorable mentions. First up, new fireplace, Kim Koza. Rich?
Oh, hey, I'm sorry. I forgot the setup. Yeah, I would say across the board with fire that, and I can say it for this photo. I'm really impressed that people took the time to try to. It's not the easiest kind of photography, obviously. This shot is. I like that silo in the foreground. I guess that's a fire. Is that a shield for heat or something? Do we have the photographer here?
I don't know if Kim is on or not.
Maybe not.
She is not.
Anyway, it must be I dig it. I'm not sure. It wasn't one of the few selects because I think it's just there is a person in the picture, and as we know, with these color temperatures that you run into with using fire as a source, that the face can often lose a lot of definition. So the person kind of doesn't play the part that you might expect a human being to play in the picture. But it's certainly, I mean, that's a real technical challenge. I find with I don't know how it is with everybody else's sensor, but I find when I'm in this situation, sometimes I just simply can't go, and I'm pretty decent at Photoshop. I can't go anywhere, and I end up trying black and white, where amazingly, some of that data actually seems to be stored in a better way. But it's a great shot anyway. I mean, there weren't any bad shots in the group.
Okay, next up is Pizza Oven Burrito, Sean Sullivan.
This is fascinating. I'll have more to say about it later because I believe there's another picture by Sean. And I really like the dreaminess of this picture quite a lot. I don't see any reason why we should stay in the realm of the kind of real world. This has a very Disney, I don't know, it's a very interesting quality to it, and I do dig that. And I'm not sure, this isn't the best way to view it technically, so I'm not going to judge little things like the black and whatever. I just think it's fascinating, and I really like the dreaminess of it.
Next up is Tea Lights, Paula Keefe.
This shot, I like highly graphic shots, and this could be wrapping paper, which would be cool. but I didn't feel as though technically, that the black level was made. I'm not trying to put words in the photographer's mouth, but I'm wanting the fire to be a little more defined and maybe a black all around, or there's something a little indistinct about it. And again, this isn't the perfect way to view photos. I know that, but I do love the repeat. And years ago, when I was had my own studio in New York City, this type of photograph is the kind of photograph I did quite often for corporate clients. I really love repeating things and finding patterns and making new patterns. So, is the photographer on who shot this?
Paula.
Paula?
Paula is not here.
Okay, I'm assuming it's a single image over and over again. Again, I think it's a great attempt, but I'm not sure why she chose to have it be as clouded as it is. It just doesn't pop as much, right?
Yep. Next up is Welcome, Kim Koza.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of message this is supposed to be. The fire is captured really nicely. It looks like welcome, not so much, which of course, with my dark sense of humor, I like. Not one of the top shots, but again, almost all the shots were to my liking, if that's a thing. But yeah, I like the creepy message of it, that's for sure, especially at Halloween.
Okay, next up is Toasty, Thomas Whitmore.
Nice shot with the kid. I think compositionally, perhaps, and maybe depth of field wise, I kind of want this super cute kid to pop a little more and to be a little more defined in the space. This is one of those odd ones again where I wonder what it would look like in black and white, and whether in black and white you could play around with the tones in there, and it would therefore bring, because she's of a very specific tonal range that's not shared by anything except the fire, pretty much, with that orangey face. I wonder if it would have a more upfront kind of look. Of course, you'd lose the color, but I don't think I'd miss the color in this picture. I do like the other family unit in the back, but I think they're a little far back to be important enough to really consider. So I just want to see the kid a little more. But she's super cute, and again, kudos to anybody who took on this challenge of photographing with fire.
Next up is Lake Champlain and the Mountains of Vermont, Dow Smith.
Yeah, not so much fiery in this picture. It was probably there were black flies, but if we had waited a little later, maybe, and the fire was a little more prominent, it would have been better for the theme. Also, unless you didn't know the people, it would have been nice to maybe have them face each other, or just I'm looking for something to focus on. But again, the main thing is that there just wasn't the fire element, but it's certainly a beautiful environment. Let me say a little tiny thing. The cropping is a little tight on the bottom. I feel like I want it to be a little more, or back a little further. I tend to crop a great deal as well. I may be an overcropper, but there's a bunch of overcropping in all the pictures we'll see tonight, especially from the bottom, that I'm not quite sure. Like in this case, it certainly wasn't. It's not as though some instant moment was captured and the photographer didn't have a time to reframe. So if it's all about the chairs and this mushroom circle that they make in that lake, then I guess I want to see more of it. A little, not a huge amount, but a little more, so it kind of floats in space. So again, it's something that I accuse myself of often, but I think it's cropped a little tight for me, this particular shot.
Okay, next up is Fire in Water Refraction, Joe Catronio.
Is Joe on the line?
I believe he is.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, I can't even tell us what's going on here.
That's I took a picture of the candle separately, and when you photograph things through a water drop, it turns them upside down. So I put it on an iPad, turn the iPad upside down so that the candle refracts right side up inside the water drop on top of the dandelion seed.
Wait a minute. So this was done in one shot?
Well, actually,
or was it in Photoshop?
Actually, no, it's a refraction.
Wow.
I took a photo of the candle, right?
Right.
Put it on an iPad,
What the
turned it
hell?
turned it upside down,
Gotcha.
put it behind the water drop on the dandelion seed, and took a refraction. And it's two shots, focus stack manually.
Right. Wow. I'm sorry I didn't give it at least an honorable mention. It's really pretty amazing. I couldn't tell what I was looking at, and there you go.
Okay.
That's a pretty amazing feat. When I was at Parsons School of Design in New York City, I studied under Bert Stern. And Bert Stern, he's one of the pillars of modern advertising photography, and one of the first shots that he did, everybody was always just about to fire him. That's kind of his career. And one of his first iconic shots was for Smirnoff, who he went on to work with Smirnoff for years. And he went to Egypt and photographed a martini glass, and he shot it in front of the pyramids and got just your effect. But the pyramid was upside down in the martini glass.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you look at the shot now and it's a little innocent maybe, but back then, the idea that it was like a $5,000 photo shoot, and everybody their hair was on fire. But that's now that I see this, I realize, wow, you were really working on a completely different level. I apologize for not appreciating it more.
Okay.
It's really great.
Thank you.
It's a lot of hard work.
Next up is Sparkler Bouquet, Joe Catronio.
This is lovely. This is, it's obviously an exposure. Was it exposure nightmare, or did it just like come to you right away?
I took a few shots to get the sparkler right.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah, it's I'm not sure about the part that the blue vase plays in the picture. Again, I don't have a real answer. I'm just not sure, whether I would like it more if it was floating, or I'm not quite certain how I feel about it. But again, a very nice shot. This was very close to being an honorable mention, having known not what to do with the other photograph. But I collected a beautiful from Japan and then Chinatown from gifts friends gave me. I collected this big bouquet of sparklers from Asia. And I was going to light one of them on a fire on our porch years ago when we lived in Latham. And unfortunately, the first one that I lit, a spark went and hit the entire vase. And I was enveloped in dark green smoke for about 5 minutes. My kids thought I was dead. Not so good with my lungs, but anyway, you caught a nice moment. The sparks are really beautiful. I'd like to see, there's such a, making something real that only exists for such a small fraction of a second. Do you know what shutter speed you shot on it?
Joe?
We can't hear
Sorry,
you.
I'm sorry I was on mute. I don't recall.
Okay, yeah, it's really pretty cool. Thank you.
He shot it, I can tell you. You shot it at 0.8 seconds at f8. At ISO 800 and a 91 millimeter.
8 seconds? How is that possible?
0.8.
I think it said 0.8 seconds.
0.8.
Oh, I'm sorry, an eighth of a second. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think that's better than just freezing it, right? Because you got the contrails there. That's very cool.
Next up is Iron in the Fire, Marguerite Hill.
Oh, I see the iron now. This was one that I'm not quite sure. The background is not quite enough contrast. I like the way the fire is captured. It certainly makes some beautiful shapes. Again, it looks a little tightly cropped for my taste. I don't know. I think it would have been better to kind of let the flames be fully resolved and let them decide what the frame was going to be, as opposed to kind of cropping them in. But again, it's a tight cropping thing. And also, like the circle of chairs picture, I think this would have been a little more exciting, where to be a little darker out, a little contrasty. But the flames are beautiful.
Next up is Match Flame, Paula Keefe.
This is very nice. This was really close to being I ran out of honorable mentions. I like the bokeh. That's a nice thing to play with. A little technically, I kind of want to see it with some black somewhere. If it is going to be this theme with color and stuff, I guess that's okay. Certainly, that's the photographer's decision. But I think I'm looking for a little more contrast in it on both sides of the spectrum, because there's plenty of interesting detail. And in other words, it's almost as though you're seeing it through a scrim. So I'm getting only kind of one and a half layers out of something that could be 3 or 4 layers deep visually. So it just lacks a little vocabulary as far as the tones. And I think that greater vocabulary might have been, but then again, it's a look, I mean, when people use color grading and making films, you might see a whole film, let's say, that is done in this way. But just for me at this time, that's the way I felt about it.
Okay. Next up is Rainbow Flames, Elena Kesey.
Yeah, this is funny. This one really reminded me of commercial photographic work from the time that I had my studio in New York City. Everybody had like a black plate with a cherry on it with some sauce, and this would have been that kind of image where people were really showing off what was it called back then? What was the fancy, I'm trying to remember, the fancy like plastic coated color printing that was such the rage back then. It's going to come to me later and I'll just blurt it out. But this is the kind of show-off picture that studios did to show. And now in digital, of course, we don't have to deal with the dust and everything, so it's far easier to pull off. But it's actually this is quite lovely too. There's really, I don't think I would change much about it. I actually like this shot.
Next up, A Watched Pot Does Boil, Linda Tomasulo.
Yeah. I'm glad someone took something strange on, like this fire that is so typical on a stove. This one, I'm just not quite sure what the cropping is supposed to mean. It has it's quite glib. It's like, here's the pot, and it really behaves, and it's cropped right on the fire, and it needs to like breathe a little bit. So this is one where, I'm not quite sure. I'm certain the photographer but the photographer kind of wants us to see everything. Like, here's the fire, here's the pot, here's the handle. Maybe if it was, the one thing I liked a lot about it, if you can get close to your monitors, is the bubbles are really interestingly captured. I'd be thrilled if it was shallower depth of field and it really paid attention to those bubbles, because they're really strange. And then you would get this, and along the same plane of focus, you would grab some of the flame too. So that's kind of my favorite part of the picture, and it gets lost because the back of the handle is the same, is also in focus. So whether it was done in the camera with a large aperture or post, I've done a lot of out of focus work post in Photoshop that when I wasn't happy with what I was able to get, or before I was shooting with digital cameras when at the Times Union, I was shooting a lot. You'll notice, by the way, that from the Times Union, I've won awards in illustration and graphic design, page design, even writing. I've won awards, but never for photography. And I actually did a lot of photography there, and that was just a decision by the photo department, by the person who was running it at the time, that they were never going to put one of my photographs in because I was not in their department. So that was a completely political choice. A little, am I bitter? Am I bitter? Yes, I'm bitter. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, honorable mentions. First up, almost ready for the stakes, Dan Steen.
Yeah, this one, again, it's very hard with the honorables, right? Because they're so close to other favorites. This is another one where I really wish we could have seen more of the fire, but there are just so many beautiful tones captured in this picture. It has a fire is a pretty mundane thing, right? We all have fires in our backyards, and this is that same mundane fire, but it's captured in a very unique way. Now, were these the colors there, or were they enhanced? Did you throw sugar on the fire? Is the photographer with us?
Lena? Or, yeah. Oh, Dan. You got to unmute
Are you
Dan.
with us, Dan?
Yeah.
Hey, Dan.
How you doing? One of the other campers had some of those pine cones. You can see one in the bottom center that were
Oh.
chemically treated to add
Oh,
the
wow.
color to it. And
Yeah.
it's cropped the way it is because if it was cropped much wider, you'd start to see people's feet.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, I really dig the colors. I know it's an artificial thing, but it's really it's quite beautiful, and it makes the woods seem very beautiful too. Really cool.
Thank you.
Cool effect.
Okay, our next honorable mention, a flame with a flare, Elena Kesey.
Yeah, this is one of those. That's such a tiny moment in the life of a small tabletop fire, where a little spark gets released from the wicks, and there's something. I found it quite poetic, and the blacks are controlled very nicely, so you can really see what it is the photographer wanted to look at. And there's certainly nothing in the picture. And I like the fact that it's so wide, right? That the photographer resisted the urge to crop in and make it like a vertical, which would be a fine shot. But there's something lovely about this. Is like seeing a whole stage, and this is like the one ballet dancer in the center. You don't always have to crop the ballet dancer close. You could really see how they live, even in a completely blank environment. And the more you look, there's a lot to see. The different colors of the spark trails. It's quite interesting. I'm sure that the Elena. I'm sure that the entire, like, whatever shots you took, I'm sure there were some others that were pretty great too. Or was this like head and shoulders the best one right away? Elena?
Yeah, from this series, it was probably the best. I tried to do other shoots with burning some fuel, but the competitor was a colorful flame.
Yeah.
And there were nice contrails too, and the flame was colorful. So I sort of like were colorful a little bit more, but this one had more elegant shaped formed by sparks. And I decided to submit this one, even though
it really is it's a lovely moment.
Doesn't have many colors.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, our last honorable mention, Schmores, Thomas Whitmore.
Yeah, this is really, we had the other photo before with the child and the fire pit, and hey, this is a completely natural portrait, and for this to be at a higher level, to be really great, it's some of our finest photographers are the people who do this kind of shot, and they don't come very easily, and they don't come very often. And this shot has some compositional issues, but it also has some compositional strengths. I don't like the fact that the mom's head is popping right out of the dad's head, or I can't see enough of him. But it's made up for by the fact that we have this great kid in the foreground, and and her butt's like kind of making that, and you move right in, you follow the energy of her body holding her stick, and then the kid in the green shirt is it's pretty cool. And again, if things moved around a tiny bit, it could be even more special. And again, this is one that I would love to see in black and white. If you move the dad over with your eyes and put him like between the mom and the little boy, you can see that there's a whole like tableau that's happening here. There's a whole story. And I love shots like that. We all do, right? Because you can get lost in them and really learn a lot about this time and the family and how people dressed at this time. It's got an anthropological kind of feel to it too that I really dig. And it's what I aspire to. I mean, I take pictures at campouts and fires and with friends, and I hope to get a really great shot of a group, but often I don't even process a single one because I just miss it with everyone. It's a tough thing to try to do, especially with real humans that you're not posing, right?
Okay, and our winners, In third place, Dreaming by the Fire, Dan Steen.
So here's another magical, weird, and I just think this is composed. Does anybody else get a feeling from this that it's like a diorama from a museum about prehistoric people? That was like the first vibe that I got from it, that it's painted on a wall and it just has a painterly look. It's not real. I love this weird furriness in the foreground, and the little stick that's leaning up against the wall, and the way the back wall is illuminated too. It really is Paleolithic, and which is kind of cool. That's a lot to do with one simple photograph. I think it's a pretty cool picture. Do you have anything to tell us about shooting it? What kind of oven was it?
Actually, it's a fireplace at Frontier Town Campground.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It certainly looks thousands of years older than even Frontier Town. It's pretty cool.
Okay, in second place, Don't Play in Fire, Linda Tomasulo.
You know, there are little things about this shot but it's just such a crazy idea, and it's so wonderfully mad. And, you know, this person, Linda really took a risk here and did something really bizarre with a kid jumping into or over, hopefully over, a fire. And it just, it's obviously provocative. I think, again, Linda had her hands full with trying to make the hair work against the background. But, you know, I'd say all in all, though, it does catch your eye. And it's, you know, I had to give it a good score just for the risk that she took in trying to do something, bring us something that was this special. Because it's, frankly, so easy to fail completely when you take great risks. So, and it is a lot of fun. Are you there, Linda?
Somewhere she is.
Here.
Hey, Linda. Yeah. We can't see you, but we can see your picture.
I'm here now.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, thank you. Can you tell us something about putting it together?
Well, it's a composite, and
yeah.
I was in a facility that had one of those gas, decorative gas fireplaces on the wall.
Right.
So I said fire. I took that shot, and then I kind of remembered that I had this gal, and I don't even remember where I shot her now, that jumping gal, and I decided to put them together.
What a crazy idea. See, it is a crazy story.
not something I normally do, but
I really celebrate that. And thank you for using your imagination and bringing us something, again, really unique.
I'm glad you liked it.
Okay. And first place tonight.
And by the way, excuse me, that's a pretty great composition, everybody, right? I mean, it's not just dead center. It really, there's so much to like about this picture. Anyway, thanks again.
Okay. And in first place, Fire Breather, Sean Sullivan.
You know, I love portraiture, and fire and portraiture don't really go along together, but this is a pretty wonderful portrait of this bekilted fire breather. I was working with a fire breather last week, actually, on a project, and it's quite alarming, blowing rum all over the place. But yeah, it's a really cool portrait. Again, it has a deeply anthropological kind of vibe to it. I mean, you know, it's so much, it speaks so much of our steampunky, gypsy vibe that you'll find a lot now in our culture, especially, with our economy the way it is and everything else. And it captures a lot that I think is very nice now, but I think in the future will tell a lot and share a lot with future viewers as well. It's a pretty cool story. And of course, it's a pretty great exposure too. Again, the cropping, Sean could have cropped a lot tighter, and there's that urge, but there's a lot of respect here in letting the viewer see more of the fabric, see some of the background. And I really appreciate Sean for allowing us for not just making an ego trip and saying, oh, I have this great close-up of his face, but actually letting us live in this environment. And if seeing the kilt really makes it for me. I almost wish I had a little more, but I know I'm asking a lot for something that happened. It's probably the best, the very best. Obviously, it was the best shot, Sean, that you took that night of this person, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like there was one shot. Yeah, I took a series when he was doing it.
Yeah.
There was one after this where I kind of liked the flames more, but he had the rag more up on his face.
Right.
So I didn't like that. So I went back to this one.
Yeah, they get the rag up there really fast, I know, to make sure their face is not on fire.
He was a magician, minstrel guy at the Renaissance Fair over the summer.
Amazing. Which one? Down in
The
Tuxedo?
one over Indian Ladder Farms.
Oh, Indian Ladder had one. I wasn't aware.
Yep.
Yeah, really fascinating, and again, part of that curious gypsy lifestyle. And lovely. I hope everybody agrees. I completely dig all the beautiful tones in the fabrics in the background. I mean, it certainly speaks of what, I mean, we know now that there's this subculture going on, but I mean, this picture could be 100 years old, right? Or if there was such color photography, or 200 or 500 years old. There's a wonderful timelessness to it. And again, it's a beautiful shot. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So on to the second assigned topic, which was slow shutter speed. And we have 27 images. We have 3 places and 3 honorable mentions.
By the way, I always have to look at the shots here and look to see who shot them, because I make it a point. I don't even know if the names accompany the pictures when you show them to me, but I never look at names at any art show. I blank them out. So I wouldn't have seen them if they were there.
Yeah, I give the titles, but not the names of the.
That's great. That's wise.
Because some images, the title needs to be, it helps explain more. Yeah,
I like the titles.
Giants of the Desert, Jean McKaywood.
I'm going to almost, this is lovely. And it has not only is it's nicely composed, it's obviously interesting. I don't do this kind of work, but I really respect it a great deal. And also it has here's a case where a limited palette, it's really working for this. It wouldn't matter what the medium is here. This could easily be a pastel or it really is pretty terrific, but we'll talk more about it later because I believe there's another entry by the same photographer.
Up is Sparklers, Marguerite Hill.
Well, this is funny, right? Because this could have jumped from our other category, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are those fancy Asian sparklers that almost burned down my house the last time in Latham. This shot, it's I love the trails on the sparklers and the moment, but the secondary woman in purple, her head is completely missing. So there are a couple things that kept it from being, elevated to honorable. What I do like, I like very much the Maxfield Parish kind of trees in the background that happened because of the nighttime and the depth of field. That's really pretty. So maybe if it was wider, but again, it makes me uncomfortable. If you have a secondary person in the shot like that, they either have to be less important or more important. And in this particular case, she's just a little cropped out, but there are aspects of the shot that I really love.
Next up, Stuyvesant Falls, Thomas Whitmore.
Yeah, there was a lot of competition here with water features. So that's tough on all of them then, right? Because can't pick them all. So, but this was a very nice one. And I like the, I dig when cropping does that, right? When you have this like zone of trees that just could not possibly live in that zone of the beautiful drapery of the water coming down and then the white water and then the foreground. I love that stratification. And again, the only reason it didn't make it up higher is because there were a lot of nature shots and that was tough. And it was in tough company.
Okay, next up is a New York Minute, Neil Shapiro.
Again, similar. And this one is, I love the, I'm going to ask Neil whether that was really a glow on those trees, or whether he dodged a little bit. Like, how did that happen, Neil? How did you end up with that fanciful light area there around the trees?
I don't believe he's here.
Okay. Anyway, it's beautiful, but it's very, very close to another shot that we'll see coming up soon, and it just didn't make the grade because of that. But it is very, very lovely time exposure of water, especially with the addition of the trees. It isn't all about the water; it's about the moment, and it's very, very pretty. It would obviously make a terrific print in someone's home.
Okay, next up is Waterfall 1, Dan Steen.
Again, more really nice water stuff. I would say this one has a critical flaw given the other group, in that just wasn't enough time given for the water to be as magical as it had become in many of the other pictures. And so, it was easier to, compositionally, I like it. I like the way the eyes led from that first almost animalistic kind of rock coming in, and then we're zigzagged through the back, and then there's a horizon line that's tilted. It's really pretty terrific. And again, the only thing is, I think, compared to the other shots, it doesn't play. The degree to which it uses time is not as fanciful or imaginative as in some of the other shots, but it's a great composition, and it's also toned very nicely. Is that just a regular? Did you use some kind of black and white plug-in for that, or is it just a regular black and white image that you processed?
I think I used Silver Effects Pro.
Yeah, kind of had that feel, and that's not a diss. That's a compliment. Yeah, Silver Effects really, it held on to those details. It looks similar to. Excuse me. I know when I was young, working in the darkroom, you had to risk poisoning yourself to get these tones. We used to work with selenium, which is not a good thing to work with. But yeah, that's a really cool set of tones, Dan. Really nice.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Waterfall 2, Dan Steen.
Yeah, definitely more motion here. And again, it was only competition that... here's a pet peeve of mine. Not about this photograph, but about nature. Nature pisses me off because it puts little branches where I don't want them. And I want to bring... I always want to... I feel like I want to have my shotgun with me so I can actually blow away any branches that I don't like that are 20 feet away. But yeah, so I'm not as crazy about how some of the little branches are encroaching. I want that one on the left to be down, or I want a team of stylists that go with me everywhere and move branches for me. But I don't have that for some reason. But again, this was I love the silky effect that the time exposure. This was a tripod, obviously, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I figured. How many? Do you know how long it was, the exposure?
Sean would have to look.
1/10 of a second.
Oh wow, that was really fast moving water.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, really nice. I like the little drip coming off the rock on the left too. Very pretty.
Okay, next up is Ghostly Descent, Linda Tomasulo.
There are a few like this, and I like them. I guess it depends on what mood you're in. I'm not quite sure. On another day, I probably would have just chosen all of these, and then I don't think I chose any of these. But I like this shot. It's really great. It's always hard to judge these photo things because you have to decide what you're judging on it. I like the magical quality of the people. What is it? Hans Richter did the series of I think they're paintings and maybe photographs too of people descending stairs and being distorted as they come down. So I really dig that. Maybe I want them to be a little bigger, frankly. And I do love the drama of the composition. I think it's almost perfect with the way the railing works. But I guess I want the people to be a little more something, against the background. But I really dig the idea. And I hope that Linda does more of them because I think it's a cool way to, in other words, don't think of this just as that assignment. I think this is something you should do more of, because at a certain magical point, they become very special and not just an experiment. And this is really close. I dig the mystery of it.
Okay, next up is Major General Alan Wiggins.
Yeah, again, I'm a good friend of Skip Dickstein's, at Steen's, and from the Times Union, and he does a lot of racing pictures. And also Greg Montgomery does all the posters for 37 years now for Traverse Day. So I get to see a lot of great horse photography, and this is good. It's actually very good. Again, it was very close. Technically, it's a good shot. It's an exciting moment. There are a lot of exciting moments in racing. I love the crazy legs on the horse, the magical things that you learn about horse motion when you freeze it. And were you tracking this shot?
Yeah, I was panning that. I think that's at about a 60th of a second, I think.
Well, kudos that's nice panning too. That's not easy to do.
Okay, next up is 1938 Morgan F4 Shark Lime Rock Park Historic Festival 2021, the world's longest title. Dow Smith.
Yeah, this is another one where you have to be tracking and shooting at the same time. It's and that's a Morgan probably, right? Yeah. Oh, it does say Morgan 38. Amazing car, and I love car shots. I was lucky enough. I did only once, but I shot at Pebble Beach and took in the entire panoply of that environment back in, it was the year the Porsche 918, I think, came out. It was a while ago now. But that was Alfa Romeo was the theme. And you can get really lost in this car stuff. Again, this was close for me. I have a real soft spot for cars, but it just didn't quite make it to the top of the line. But I'm glad you were there and shot it, because I love looking at car pictures.
Okay, next up is the Lotus 23 Lime Rock Park Historic Festival 2021. Dow Smith.
Yeah, this is, I like this one better because I think it's more of a, I like it even more looking at it now. Really the panning creates a tremendous amount of drama, and really should have been an honorable mention. It must have missed by a fraction of a hair. It's just really, it changes everything, right? Because the car is so distinct against a completely abstracted foreground and background. And that's not easy to do, and it's a cool looking car too. What car is that? It's a Lotus, yeah, figure. Anyway, that's a pretty great shot. Thank you.
Next up is In the Wind, Claudia Jakubowski.
Yeah, what are these, Claudia? What are we looking at?
It's a rain catcher.
Oh, that's what I thought it might be, like on chains?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this was very close too. And again, it's you have to, even me, I never judged the same contest twice probably. This could easily have been in the top 3. I don't know. There was something a little bit compositionally I felt that it was taken away from me, but I'm not quite sure why. But I do love I think what I like the most about it too is the very weird effect it had on the background. Can you enlighten us with that a little bit? Was it just because of the movement? And you didn't shoot this on a tripod, right?
No, I didn't. I think it was a shrubbery behind.
A shrubbery?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really cool. Sometimes having a tripod is not all that it's cracked up to be, because this shot wouldn't be as interesting if the shrub was in perfect, harmony. The fact that it's all swirly. What camera and lens did you use?
It's a Nikon D3300, and I don't know what lens I used, honestly.
It's pretty.
I used a 50 millimeter at f1.8.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it had to be pretty wide open aperture. Yeah, it's pretty magical. I really like where it takes me. It's almost like a fairy picture from long ago when people used to fake the fairy pictures. It really has a lovely, And again, the background really makes it for me. I'm getting lost in it now more.
Thank you.
Next up is Windy, Kim Koza.
This is a very nice portrait, and the time thing is not as strong with this one, and I think that's why it slipped a little bit backwards, because I love portraits. I like portraits with weird focus points too. You don't always have to focus on, a person's nose and eye. So, and I like the fact that the hair is captured. I think processing wise, I think I would have preferred a little more contrast here, and that's why it also didn't maybe grab me. In the area under the ear, all the way deep in the hair, and on part of the sweater under the hair, would have been nice to allow for there to be more storytelling. It's language, right? So in this way, you're saying, no, I wanted to use 4 words. Well, I think this picture would be that much better if you used 12 words, to describe it. But I love the composition. I love the fact that the focal point is completely irrational. And it's a very nice photograph.
Okay, next up is the Adirondack Star Trails, Linda Thomas Earl.
Yeah, technically, I like this. There's nothing wrong with this picture, but there's kind of nothing extra about it either, right? It's more of, it clicks off the boxes. It's a nice time exposure, and there's just something that I want to know more about the photographer and less about this National Geographic kind of, technically perfect kind of moment. So that's the only reason it doesn't rise any, because I love the little arcs. How long does it take to take a picture like that? Is that an hour?
It's 10 seconds.
No,
10 seconds only.
It was 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Yeah, that's more like it. Yeah.
I'm just going by the metadata here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't capture it. It's live comp in the Olympus EM1 Mark III.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, what I like about it too is that the, circles get tighter and tighter to the upper left. I don't know exactly what it is that I'd be looking for, but to elevate it a little more. But there's just a little of you, Linda, not there in the decision. But I'm happy to look at it. It's quite lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, Somewhere in Space, Elena Kesey.
There's another one. I want the photographer to talk about this. This is pretty cool, really, and probably should have been. I mean, this is a person taking, again, a pretty weird risk, and it's kind of not of this time. It does look like a picture from the 70s or the 80s. It's kind of an interesting decision. And can you tell us about it, Elena?
Yeah, what would you like to hear about it?
Yeah, what was that light source?
The light source were little fairy lights, colorful
Really?
fairy lights.
And then was it on a mirror or a piece of steel?
No, it was just on glass put on black paper, and there was a black background behind, and it was dark, and I moved the lights around the ball in various ways.
Did you have to take many exposures before you liked one, or?
No, I came to the right exposure pretty quickly, and I liked it, and I had a hard time deciding which image to submit, because I had many which I liked or
Right.
not quite like. And I didn't think they were perfect. I wish something would be different in each one, but they were. I like some more for some reasons and the others for different reasons.
I think that it's technically very beautiful. Your blacks are nicely controlled. Each color sings. There's nothing that just disappears or becomes too white, or it's I especially like the blue, the blue line that doesn't quite behave with all the other lights. I think that really makes it very special. Otherwise, it would seem just technically nice, but the blue line makes it a little wild. I almost want to see more of it. But anyway, it's a real technical tour de force. You really did a good job with it. Do you know what camera did you use?
I used Nikon DX 7200.
There are so many camera models, right? It's almost difficult to ask now. When I was coming up, if it was Nikon, it was 3 different cameras, maybe. That's it. Now there is so many. But yeah, is this a zoom lens or a fixed focal length?
This one was fixed 50mm lens, I think.
Yeah.
Somehow one line shows in strange color here on this
Which one?
monitor. It's supposed to be light yellow and it shows more like dirty beige.
Interesting. Yeah, well,
the
that's
one in the lower bar.
Yeah,
lower
sure.
bunch.
I see what you
Looking
mean.
strange.
Very interesting. Well, the fidelity's pretty good, and it seemed to me that it had to be a fixed focal length lens because it's quite sharp. You know, the crystal ball. Crystal balls are great, right?
That was my first try. I didn't use it before.
I had a crystal ball for a client in Manhattan, and it was for a dental company, I think. And it was, we can tell the future of your dental sales, or some terrible copy. But it was, they wanted it, and of course, crystal balls are this big, but I wanted one this big. And I still own it, and I bought it at a Wiccan, like a witch store in New York City, from a guy with a tattooed face. And that was, believe me, that was the 70s. No one had a tattooed face back then. And he had a monkey skeleton in a jar in back of him. And I wrote him a check from my studio for the crystal ball, and he charged way too much money back then, but nobody had it, right? There was no Amazon. I think I paid $500 for it. And I wrote him the check, and he said, "Is this check good?" And I looked at him. He had weird piercings in his ear, the tattooed face, a monkey in a jar. I said, "Do you think I'd write you a bad check?" Anyway, the answer was no. But I still own it, and actually the crystal ball twice started a fire in my house. It started a carpet on fire and burned a hole in a wooden floor because we put it in a spot in 2 different homes where it was allowed that the sun hit it from coming through a shade, an open drape, and it burned a hole twice. So it's a killer crystal ball. Watch out for those crystal balls.
Looks like you have a lot of personal history with fires.
I do. I do. Well, luckily we smelled it both times. We were home and we smelled it, and we saw the wisp coming up from the ground.
All right. Next up is Fog Over Mill Creek, Elena Kesey.
The more I looked at these after I sent this is another one. It's very, very close to having been a selection. The water is just absolutely dreamy. I think everybody agrees. I guess this picture would have taken on just that extra bit of extra magic if there was a little wind that day and the leaves were moving as well, and the entire thing was a impressionist painting. So, but this is so close, right? It really is a beautiful impressionist photograph that begs a second and third viewing at it, and is a lot to see in it. It's really a very lovely picture. If there was a little play in the leaves, it would be even more special. But it is. You can't get that. You can't order that up. It's really a very beautiful picture. Where is this place? Elena?
Yeah, one moment, I have to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
It's near Lake Luzerne.
Wow, just beautiful. Crazy beautiful. And did you know, like, you were walking and you just knew this was going to be beautiful, or did you know to find this place?
I knew this place from the past.
Wow, really great.
Thank
Is
you.
that a home, or what is that there? A mill or a home?
It's a historical place. It
Ah.
used to be the pulp house. So there was a mill, and I think it's first pulp house in the United States.
Wow. Wow, it's exceptional. Thank you for the story too. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Okay, next up is Rocks Wave, Kim Koza.
Yeah, I really like the controlled depth of field here. Not quite sure if it's exactly in the spot that I want it, but I like the fact that it's controlled. I'm a big shallow depth of field person, I must admit, and I probably overuse it in my portraiture, but it's, you got to hang your hat somewhere. That's the kind of work that I do. So I do like that. It's just that in this picture, I feel like it should have been moved back a little bit, and to capture what's happening with the water. Is that water rain splashing, or what is it?
Kim's not on.
Oh, Kim's not with us.
No.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we'll ask her when we see her the next time. But yeah, it's a lovely shot. I like the palette too. I think it's a little different. I'm being directed to look at this particular strata of little rocks though, and they're not the strongest thing in the photo. So that's my take.
Okay. Next up is Boston Streamliner, Thomas Whitmore.
What a strange thing. Yeah, it becomes a whole different creature. It's a good shot in that it definitely meets the theme. This is another cropping one. It is kind of exciting to crop this type, but for this particular one, I feel like we need to see a little more for it to work. It has the cropping of something that's almost like an ad, or there's like a purpose to the cropping, but I'm just not picking up on that. But I love the fact that the train becomes so strangely abstracted, especially with the what is that technical thing that happens? Sean, maybe you can explain it to us. This is like the shutter where the light actually goes ahead of the photograph. How does that happen?
It is, I think it's rear curtain. I'm not sure.
Yeah, right. That's what I assumed. Very cool. Cool effect. Yeah, like an old.
I like it because it looks like a hover train. Can't see the wheels.
Yeah, exactly. They just disappear. Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
I went back and looked at some of my old black and whites, and they have the same effect in them from the 70s.
Interesting. So they're just not there for long enough to matter, right?
Yeah.
Very weird.
It's not a digital thing. It's just a image thing.
See, I'm liking it more and more.
Okay, next up is Firewheel, Joe Catronio.
Yeah, what are we looking at, Joe?
That's a little knickknack that has a rotating wheel. Looks like a ship's wheel, and it's in camera multiple exposures.
Oh wow!
You can see 3 wheels where it was sitting still, and then I just let it rock, and I put the camera on continuous shooting mode, and took a lot of different tries at it to get it all lined up, and that's what that is. It's on a piece of lucite, so it reflects.
Yeah, and you chose the colors in the background, right?
Yeah, those are 2 LED lights with one blue and one orange gel.
Wow, I'm liking this more. Look at it too. It's actually pretty amazing. Not quite sure. Yeah, it's really very cool. And I love the fact that it's a byproduct of a decision in every single aspect, right? I mean, the exposure, the up and down weird playing card reflection composition of it, the color, auras from the sides, complete control of the artist over the image, which I really have a great deal of respect for. Yeah, it's another one. The more I'm looking at it, the more I like it.
Thank you.
Next up is Intersection, Bertrand Stripestein.
You know, this is different than many of the other pictures. I'm glad that we're seeing something of our culture and time. If there had been a little more contrast, I think it took me a minute to even realize this was a time exposure and that these just weren't like worn spots in the street. So it's a little bit of an exposure thing. I'm not quite sure what maybe it could be processed differently to enhance that, but it's the special. I do like the composition. I love the weird, we're learning about what a city intersection looks like in the 21st century with the space age trails going through it. But again, I love the weird lighting that happens in metropolitan settings in dusk and at night, and the weird color temperatures that pop up. And I guess I like the aqua on the sidewalk to the left and that weird other patch of aqua to the right. And I love all that. I guess I just want it to be, and maybe it is a processing thing. I just wanted things to be a little more extreme here to pop out. But it has good bones. And again, I like to think that if we looked back at photographs in 25 or 30 years, they take on that very different significance of what things were like then. And this does look like the 21st century, but also the future too. It's pretty cool.
Okay, next up is Pendulum Wave, Joe Catronio.
Yeah, another one that's there's a lot of work that went into this. Yes, Joe?
Yeah, it's I saw on YouTube somebody made one of these pendulum waves where you put pendulums and you change the length so it changes the frequency, so they make weird patterns. Right. So I made one just for fun and I took some pictures of it.
And they're just glass balls?
Those little marbles.
Marbles? And you glued them on, or how did you?
Yeah, hot glue gun.
Holy crap. Well, it's actually, I think also what I like about this picture is the beautiful background. Can you tell us how you achieved that very oil painterly looking background?
That's a texture from Topaz Studio 2.
Wow. It's really, it goes well. I mean, it looks like a stock photo, right? Of some, corporate, like, signifying time or, time management or something. It's very, very interesting. Yeah, the work really, when I had my studio in New York City, if there was one thing, and I did portraiture and I did work for banks and photographed bank presidents and presidents, President Ford and Kissinger and Schlesinger and all these people. But if I was known for anything, it was patience. It was a time before Photoshop, and I would take pictures like this, but in camera, and it all had to be there, There was no anything. There was no Photoshop. There was nothing. And so it brings me back to kind of that era. And it would take me, on average, a day to take a single picture. But often, one picture, because of the model making involved, took us a few months. And I did other work, luckily, but that one picture took us a few months. But 13 hours was not uncommon. I had a really good set of, I had great assistants and stuff. And you just had to hang in there to get the pictures. We did special effects in camera with half silvered mirrors and smoke and in 4x5. And this brings me back to those days of course, the only difference being that everything had to be there at the same time. We burned through a lot of Polaroid. It was an expensive process.
Okay,
this took a couple of days. It's hard to get the pattern you want.
I'll bet.
Snap it.
I'll bet.
Okay, next up is Lark Street Stroll, Rich Stripestein.
Yeah, this is I love pictures of people, and to use a person in a theme that's a technical one is pretty great. And it's a little distracting. I don't quite see the guy as much as I want to, even though he could be more blurry maybe, but it's just where he falls. I'm seeing too much of the Subaru like in the background, but I really like the idea that some folks took on the challenge of motion with a portrait, because that's really brave, and I dig that that urge. Maybe if the depth of field had been more shallow too, it would add to the kind of craziness to the motion. You can see it's starting to work back there. But I do love watching especially with the ragged pants, right? They're very animated.
Okay, honorable mentions. First up, portrait.
Yeah, so here we go. So here's another daring. I couldn't look at this picture without thinking of the early work of Man Ray and folks like that, photographers who were working obviously in film. And, it's similar to movies, right? When people started taking pictures, so many of them said, oh, this is magic. So they took magical pictures. And, and the same thing happened in film. So much early silent film is very magical in nature. Fairies and magic tricks and people appearing and disappearing. And this harkens back to that. I'm not crazy about the cropping, which affected a little bit how I felt about it. But I love, first of all, the fact that it's a portrait and it has the double exposure done with time. But the fact that we get two portraits with it is my favorite part. We have the looking off to the side and looking straight at the viewer. So it's a pretty awesome photograph that, again, good control of the black tones, nice tones all throughout, and it's a pretty wonderful adventure. Paula, that's where did you shoot this, Paula? I know she's silencing herself. Oh, maybe she's gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, lovely shot.
Next honorable mention, the Great Egg Skate, Rich Schreiber.
Yeah, this is a more successful shot of a person. And again, it's aren't we just lucky also when we got, they asked Napoleon what is the trait that he looked for the most in his generals, and he said luck, which is hilarious, right? But I get Napoleon's point. As much as we're all skilled in everything and dedicated, luck has a lot to do with it. And there was planning that went into this shot, but our photographer, Rich didn't freeze this young person in mid-flight. It just happened to be pretty terrific. And what appears and what doesn't appear and what is frozen in time and what is not frozen in time is pretty cool. It's almost, and it really is kind of funny too, a little humor, because you have a picture postcard of the egg and then you have this kid photobombing it, right, in this bizarre way. So again, a really enjoyable picture that it's another one that I'd like to see in black and white. I think I'd almost like it better, but it's pretty wonderful.
Okay, next honorable mention, Tranquility Base, Neil Shapiro.
Again, we've had a number of these. This composition's just great. The cascade, the location that was chosen, the decision to go black and white, I probably like a lot here. It just allows the water to be even more beautiful and doesn't distract us with what I'm sure was beautiful greenery as well. I'm sure that was really lovely, but it turns it from being a pretty picture into one that is just strong. And also it doesn't center the action. It's to the left, and there's nothing on the right that's asking for that space, right? There's nothing on the right that's saying, oh, please give me some more room on the right so I can show this rock or that. No, there's no reason whatsoever. It creates a lovely tension. That's the only purpose for it. And it's just a great little shot. And I love the trails. It's just beautiful.
Okay, and our winners in third place, Carnival Ride, Alan Wiggins.
What a nutty shot, right? Another shot in which the movement exposes really something from another dimension, right? It's not just it's not a tilt-a-whirl in a time exposure. It's not a tilt-a-whirl at all anymore. It's this other weird thing. And the sky is kind of creepy and looks like it's about to rain. I don't know, this, and there's that little blur up in the corner, which I assume are some people being hurtled to their death from this, poorly operating carnival ride. There's just it's pretty great. I maybe would have liked to have it a little wider compositionally, but it is. There's a Italian artist, I can't remember his name now, and he did paintings. I think it was the 40s and 50s, and he did paintings of terrible things happening to people. But you have to look for a minute, and you realize, wow, this is a beautiful painting, but that car is about to hit that bunch of school children crossing the street. Like, there's no way it's not going to hit them. That's what I think of when I see this picture, because it makes the ride look so dangerous and so crazy. But again, it doesn't even have to be a ride. It's just a beautiful, weird thing in a night sky, and great shot. Nice shot, Alan.
Okay. Second place, slow moving, Claudia Jakubowski.
Again, this is why it was difficult with these. There is those weeds are just perfect, right? They're soft, and they're in pretty good focus actually, but the nature of them is soft all by themselves, which is a nice trick. And the rocks in the foreground just have so much detail, and there's not even a lot of water. I might have liked a little more water in the foreground, but I just like it's not particularly showy. It's not one of the big white trail time exposures of water. It's very subtle throughout, and I find it very appealing in that regard.
Yeah, in first place, Lunar Tear, Shauna Kaywood.
So, again, this is my favorite of the two shots. But again, now was this, when this shot was taken, was this kind of the color that wanted to be there, or was there a lot of purpose in coming up with this particular palette and grading? Do we know? So we don't know if John is here. Okay. Anyway, I think we can. It's a pretty great shot. You have the, cactus reaching for the sky, and the photographer giving them enough space, reaching for the stars, right? And the photographer giving them the space and the compositional allowance to do this reaching. It's just lovely. Again, it's a technical thing. The person's out there and it was cold and they took a long exposure. But although it's technical in nature, it has a painterly quality. It just has a lot going on. There was a lot of thinking involved, and obviously it took time. This was not Cartier-Bresson, like, at the one moment when the photographer turned around. Everything was calculated, and I think is very, very successful.
Okay, and that's it.
That's it.
All right.
What an awesome, I don't think these topics were particularly easy. Does anyone want to speak to that? Does anybody have a feeling about the challenge that they had before them? Does anybody want to unsilence themselves?
If you're on mute, you gotta unmute to talk.
Because I think it was a chance that many of you took to take chances and to do things that, we're not going to just be immediate, like slam dunk, pretty or successful. And that's different than a lot of the other subjects that we've seen that I've judged with you guys in the past. I think it was great.
It was
go ahead.
Too hot to take pictures of fire this summer.
Yeah, Thomas. Yeah, exactly.
To have the fire competition later in the year so we could take some fall pictures.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, I enjoyed the galleries a great deal. my wife walked by the computer and was like, "Oh, that's so beautiful." I said, "Yeah, I have an easy job this year." They were really they took us to many magical places, literally and figuratively. Anyone else want to talk about the work that they did this year to achieve what they got? The next time I take on one of these projects, I'm going to try to make a promise that I actually take a couple photographs too, just so I can be in it with you. As soon as I find out what the subjects are, if I'm lucky enough to be chosen again, I'll actually take on the challenge myself.